some years when we get to Tisha B'Av, we really have to struggle to inject any kind of meaning into it. Sometimes it feels like we're just commemorating an event that took place many thousands of years ago. Maybe it doesn't have very much to do with, real life now. But this year feels completely the opposite. It feels like every day this year has been Tisha B'Av. And we almost didn't need Tisha B'Av this year to remind ourselves of just how dangerous the world can be and how lonely it can sometimes feel to be a Jew. So let's have a think for a moment what happened that original Tisha B'Av. So in the year 3338, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Bavel at the time, eventually managed to destroy our first temple. And it didn't happen overnight. It had been a year and a half of siege around the city of Jerusalem where no one was allowed in and no one was allowed out and there was no food coming in. And the people were slowly starving to death. And eventually they managed to breach a hole in the wall of the city of Jerusalem. And 3 weeks later, they destroyed our first Beis Hamikdash, our temple. And they looted it. They took away all the gold and the silver and all of the vessels and they carried it back with them to Bavel, to Babylon. And exactly the same thing, almost exactly the same thing happened in the year 3829 when the Roman army destroyed our second temple. And last night we read the book of Eicha, in which Yirmiyahu describes the destruction of the first temple, but not just what happened, but he really describes how it felt. And for the first time, I didn't really need a picture book to understand what he was saying. Often when I'm learning bits of Torah, Tanakh, or stories, I like to kind of imagine what it looked like. And this year I could picture exactly what he was talking about. It just felt so real, as if he'd just written it right now. Yirmiyahu says, "There is none to comfort her. Of all her friends, all her allies have betrayed her. They have become her foes." And I was picturing the UN, the people that we think of who are normally our allies, who are there to support us. Maybe the hate marches going on in London. He says her infants have gone into captivity before the enemy. And in my mind, I was reading and thinking, they have orange hair. You can picture those two little boys. "My maidens and my youths have gone into captivity." And you picture all the posters of all of the hostages, all of the young ones. "Prostrate in the streets lie both young and old. My maidens and youths are fallen by the sword." And we can imagine what their homes look like after, the wreckage, the blood, all the gory details that are etched in our minds. He says, "My sighs are many and my heart is sick." And we know just how he feels. He says, "Gone is the joy of our hearts. Our dancing is turned into mourning." And I was picturing the Nova Festival, where people were dancing and happy, and it immediately turned into mourning. We can imagine exactly how they felt as the siege went on and they grew weaker and weaker and they began to lose hope. And we can understand how hard it was for them to get on with their daily life as their heart felt sick with grief. And they must have thought at some point, that's it. We're never going to recover from this. We're never going to survive this. The whole world has turned against us. But what's amazing is that to accompany these feelings that this generates, we also have the book of Ezra. And Ezra was born into captivity in Bavel, in Babylon, in exile, and he makes his way back to Israel. And he describes coming back and seeing for the first time the new temple that they rebuilt. And he describes coming with the old people. The people, it was only 70 years later, so some people who saw the first temple went into exile and came back and saw the second temple. And they lived through that destruction and they saw the beginning of the building project of the second temple. And he describes it. He says, "The old men who'd seen the first house wept loudly at the sight of the founding of this house, and many others were shouting joyously at the top of their voices, so people couldn't distinguish the shouts of joy from the people's weeping." They're completely overcome with emotion that they've made it back. They can't believe their eyes, this thing that they never thought would happen in their own lifetime, and they managed to see that. And we can understand that too, that bittersweet emotion of rebuilding anew on the site of that which we've lost. You can almost hear the echo of the radio announcement in 1967, "Har Habayit Bi'adenu." We've come back from the brink of destruction more times than any other nation on earth. We keep miraculously returning to the same tiny spot of land, and our secret weapon is that we alone are in control of our spirit. Within each and every Jew is a heart that beats to the words, "Od la'avda tikvatenu." For 2,000 years, we've never lost our optimism, our hope. Those are the words of the Hatikvah. So please God, this will be the last Tisha B'Av that we are commemorating all of those losses that we think about on Tisha B'Av. And next year, please God, will be a year of celebration where we are back in our land and all of our people are free and they've come home to us. And Mashiach comes and the world will look a completely different place, a world of peace. Wish you well over the fast.